Key point 1. The calories in, calories out theory is illogical. Since humans do not gain weight as a result of excessive eating or inactive activity, we cannot solve or prevent obesity by restricting our food intake and increasing our physical activity. This widespread notion that obesity is only a result of excessive food and inactivity is a major misunderstanding. We will never be able to address our personal weight issues, much alone the social problems of obesity, diabetes, and the illnesses associated with it, unless we grasp and rectify the calories in, calories out principle. Remember, when insulin levels are high, we gain weight. Increased insulin levels result in the accumulation of fat in our fat tissues. Carbohydrates are a significant factor in determining our insulin levels. Obesity is ultimately caused by a hormonal imbalance, not a caloric deficit. Several of the weight gain myths stem from the cultural ideas about why individuals acquire weight. Many individuals think that increased obesity occurs when people with disposable money become consumers of aggressively promoted items that are rich in energy but poor in nutritious value. Others think that urbanization is the primary cause, since it encourages more sedentary leisure activities and less physical exercise. In actuality, obesity is the result of a variety of causes, which have been discussed in this summary. It explores the reasons and solutions to obesity in a manner that is understandable to the general public. Key point 2. Obesity isn't cured by undereating. It's just a symptom that needs attention. Exercise improves our endurance and fitness, which promotes a long life and lowers the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. If we increase our energy expenditure, we're likely to increase our caloric intake to compensate. Physical prowess increases appetite. Weight growth is slow. If you find you're gaining weight, reduce your caloric intake and increase your physical activity. Important questions include why we become fat, where fat is stored, and where weight increase is most noticeable. Experts say that abdominal obesity increases the risk of heart disease, while being fat on the hips or butt does not. So many issues arise about fat distribution in our bodies. To understand how to lose weight, we must first comprehend our bodily systems. Obesity researchers reveal how fat was distributed in the body in the 1930s. Obesity has a significant hereditary component, researchers have found. Obesity is more probable if one's parents are obese. Some physical shapes also run in the families. The important point to note is that body fat distribution varies. Apple-shaped individuals tend to store extra body fat around the stomach. Others may be pear-shaped with extra fat mostly on the hips, buttocks, and thighs. It's not hunger or physical activity that determines relative adiposity, but rather how energy is partitioned according to the calories in and calories out theory. The genes don't control how many calories these animals eat, but how they use them. Remember, men and women fatten differently, which is another strong argument against calories in, calories out. If food is the main cause of obesity, why do other individuals eat the same amount and not become fat? Food has a role in weight reduction, but not the decisive element. Did you know? According to World Population Review, 36.2% of Americans are obese as of 2021. Key point 3. Experts believe that those who consume more calories than they expend will gain weight, according to the law of thermodynamics. Karl von Noorden, a German diabetic expert, was the first to suggest that humans are overweight because we consume more calories than we burn. Experts and lay people alike have claimed that the principles of thermodynamics require that we gain weight when we consume more calories than we burn. This statement is somewhat correct. The first rule of thermodynamics, often known as the law of energy conservation, says that energy cannot be produced or destroyed, but can only be transformed from one form to another. The first rule, according to health professionals, is important to why we become obese. Thermodynamics reveals nothing about why people gain weight. It simply states that if we consume calories, we will gain weight, and if we gain weight, more energy enters than departs. The answer to the query why refers to real reasons. The assumption is that the amount of energy we consume and the amount of energy we spend have minimal impact on one another. We may alter one deliberately while having no effect on the other, and vice versa. We may choose to eat less or go semi-starved and have no impact on how much energy we burn as a result. The calories in, calories out theory has engulfed the whole field of obesity research, and it has never been able to break free. In reality, defining obesity is something that must occur when individuals gain weight. That is, when they consume more calories than they burn. Eliminates any reasonable response to the issues of why anybody would ever do such a thing, or at the very least, why they would do it if not for circumstances beyond their control. People's attitudes about obesity must begin to take human biology into account. If you don't know why you're obese, slowing down your eating speed won't always help you lose weight. In the next chapters, we'll address issues about how to tackle the problem of weight reduction. How might we shift our perspectives in order to achieve progress? Key point 4. The laws of adiposity illuminate the significance of human physiology in obesity therapy. George Wade, a young researcher at the University of Massachusetts, set out to investigate the connection between sex hormones, weight, and hunger in the early 1970s. He accomplished this by removing the ovaries from female rats and then tracking their weight and behavior. 2 tests were carried out, and the results showed a startling truth. The animal doesn't eat too much because it's hungry. It eats too much because it's fat. This simply means that the fatter we get, the more we eat. Contrary to the belief that eating too much causes obesity, fatness is the primary cause of binge eating. In this case, the cause and effect are inverted. The rules of adiposity were born as a result of this finding. The rules of adiposity take the place of the previously mentioned laws of thermodynamics. Body fat is meticulously controlled, if not finely so, according to the first law of adiposity. The fact that men and women gain weight at different rates shows that sex hormones play a role in body fat regulation. Obesity may be produced by a regulatory flaw so tiny that it would be undetected by any method now available, according to the second law of adiposity. All diets that result in weight loss do so on one basis and one basis only. They reduce circulating levels of insulin. They create and prolong the negative stimulus of insulin deficiency. Gary Taubes. The third law says that everything that makes us fatter and heavier also causes us to overeat. Remember, we don't acquire weight because we eat a lot. Rather, we eat much more because we are overweight. Virtue has less to do with our size than it does with our weight. Hormones and enzymes promote our development as we get taller, and as a consequence, we eat more calories than we burn. The cause is growth. The consequences include a rise in hunger and a reduction in energy expenditure. When we become fatter, the same thing happens. Key point 5. Both overeating and sedentary behavior are symptoms of regulatory failure. In 1908, a German doctor named Gustav von Bergmann developed the word lipophilia to describe the idea of certain tissues that prefer to mix with fats, which differs from person to person, much as some individuals are hairier than others. To lose weight, we must reduce our insulin levels by reducing the amount of calories we consume. What biological factors control the quantity of fat in our adipose tissue? How can we change the components of nature, food, and lifestyle to fight the tendency to gain weight? Answers to these issues may be found in basic biology and endocrinology. This was discovered by researchers between the 1920s and the 1980s. Basic biology research shows the following. Fat mobilization and deposition occur constantly, regardless of the animal's nutritional status. Consider your adipose tissue to be a wallet rather than a savings or retirement account. Each meal makes you bigger, and the longer you wait between meals, the thinner you become. Fat cells serve as energy reservoirs. Fat in our bodies comes in 2 types, each of which serves a distinct function. Fat is transported in the form of fatty acids into and out of cells, and it is stored as triglycerides. Insulin is produced in response to carbohydrates in the diet, as well as to control the storage and utilization of fat and protein. The quality and amount of carbohydrates eaten are the primary determinants of insulin levels in the circulation. Insulin instructs fat cells to suppress hormone-sensitive lipase, or HSL, and take in more fatty acids through LPL, preventing fatty acid release. People who are lipophilic gain weight quickly, whereas those who are not lipophilic struggle to gain weight despite their best efforts. The disruption of the body's regulatory systems, also known as regulatory derangement, causes an excess of calories to be diverted into fat tissue for storage. People may feel emotionally upset and want to visit a psychiatrist, but the true cause of obesity is our biology. We are troubled by hunger and the charges of gluttony and a lack of self-control. Key point 6. There are many variables that influence the impact of a hormone on a specific tissue or cell, both inside and outside of the cell itself. Hormones aren't created in solitude. Their impact varies from cell to cell, tissue to tissue, and even throughout our growth and lifetimes. Consider insulin and other enzymes like lipoprotein lipase, or LPL, which breaks down fat, and hormone-sensitive lipase, or HSL, a multifunctional enzyme that participates in fatty acid metabolism as your car's fuel partitioning gauge. Instead of full, the F stands for fat, and the E stands for energy, not empty. If the needle is pointing to the letter F, it indicates you're storing more fat, and if it's pointing to the letter E, it suggests you've got plenty of energy for physical exercise. Not only do your insulin levels influence the direction in which the needles point, but a number of other variables also play a role. Here are a few examples. Cellular insulin resistance. Insulin has different effects on different cells. Age and genes do not cause all cells to become insulin resistant at the same time, to the same degree, or in the same manner. These contributing elements are more of a product of nature than of nurture. Regardless of our genetic propensity to obesity, the kind of food we consume may influence how much fat we acquire. The foods that are the most fatty have the biggest impact on our blood sugar and insulin levels. These are concentrated carbohydrate sources, especially ones that humans can digest quickly. Refined flour products, bread, cereals, and pasta. Liquid carbs, beer, fruit juices, and sodas. And starches, like potatoes, rice, and corn. These meals rapidly release glucose into the circulation. Insulin levels rise when blood sugar levels rise. We gain weight. Key point 7. The reduction of fructose and alcohol helps us maintain a healthy insulin level. Fructose should be avoided at all costs. The human body, especially the liver, was never designed to deal with the amount of fructose found in contemporary diets. Fructose is present in fruits in tiny amounts. A cup of blueberries, for example, has 30 calories. Our livers react to fructose by converting a large portion of it to fat and storing it in our adipose tissue. This is why biochemists regard fructose to be the most lipogenic carbohydrate. While fructose may not have an immediate impact on blood sugar and insulin levels, it is most likely a long-term cause of insulin resistance. This resistance may lead to more calories being stored as fat. When we consume green leafy carbohydrates, our blood sugar levels stay quite low. They produce a far lower insulin response and, in result, are less obese. In the liver, alcohol is broken down into a little quantity of energy and a big amount of a molecule known as citrate. The conversion of glucose to fatty acids is catalyzed by citrate. Maltose, a refined carbohydrate, accounts for about a third of the calories in a normal beer. The glycemic index, or how our blood sugar reacts to various meals, is a good indicator of how our insulin will react. The aim is to decrease the insulin we produce and the fat we acquire by lowering the glycemic index of our meals. Key point 8. Dieters who lose weight do so because of what they don't consume, not because of what they do eat. When we attempt to diet using traditional techniques or decide to eat healthily, we will eliminate the most fatty carbs from our diet as well as a part of our overall carbohydrates. As a result, weight loss programs must control fat tissue so that it releases the extra calories it has collected. Any modifications made by the dieter that do not work toward that objective will deprive the body in other ways, resulting in the regimen's failure. Remember, paying attention to the quality and amount of carbs we eat is the easiest approach to figuring out what makes us fat. The assumption that dietary fat, particularly saturated fat, causes heart disease led to the notion that carbs prevent it. Influential writers in the early 1980s were urging people to eat more carbohydrates and promoting starches and bread as diet foods. This silliness reached a peak in 1995 when the American Heart Association issued a booklet claiming that we may eat anything we want as long as it's low in fat. If dietary fat did really cause heart disease, as we've been hearing for the last 50 years, this advice and the avoidance of low-carb weight loss regimens would make sense. But there has always been enough evidence that this preoccupation with dietary fat is misguided. Yet another example of health experts deceiving themselves and the rest of us because they assume they knew the truth about a topic before doing any serious study. Any diet can be made healthy, or at least healthier, from vegan to meat-heavy, if the high glycemic index carbohydrates and sugars are removed or reduced significantly. Gary Taubes. It's impossible to pinpoint the reason for obesity in each person without thorough study. There is a lot of false information out there that is driving people astray. As long as people try to lose weight without looking to understand their body system, they'll keep believing in the many misconceptions in the real world. Key point 9. Until doctors truly understand why we get fat, we'll keep on falling for the tricks of fad diets and unnecessary use of supplements. The longer we consume a specific kind of food, the more helpful and less dangerous it becomes to us. Jeffrey Rose, a British epidemiologist, laid out the adaptation logic indirectly. She went on to say that removing artificial influences and restoring biological normalcy are the best ways to avoid chronic illnesses. Biological normalcy is the state to which humans have evolved genetically. As a result, the question arises, what are the circumstances to which humans are genetically adapted? The answer dates from the Paleolithic period, often known as the Stone Age. Our genes were successfully molded throughout this period. Prior to the advent of agriculture 12,000 years ago, our forefathers lived as hunters and gatherers. The Stone Period accounts for more than 99.5% of human history, with over 100,000 generations of humans living as hunter-gatherers, compared to 600 generations of farmers or 10 generations in the Industrial Age. There's no such thing as a weight loss recipe. Finding out why we're overweight in the first place is the greatest approach to losing weight. We may draw inferences pertinent to our issue of whether a diet that can make us slim can be a healthy diet based on the findings of anthropologists who examined modern-day hunter-gatherers. The following are the conclusions. Hunter-gatherers devoured large quantities of animal food whenever and wherever it was environmentally feasible. In comparison to today's meals, their diets were rich in protein, 19 to 35% of calories, and extremely high in fat, 28 to 58% of calories. Carbohydrates were limited in the diets, accounting for 22 to 40% of total energy. Modern foods, which now account for more than 60% of all calories in the average Western diet, would have provided practically little energy in a normal hunter-gatherer diet. These conclusions show that the early men consumed less carbohydrates and ate more protein. They were also in good shape because they mainly consumed animal foods that were not processed. Conclusion. The most difficult part of losing weight is making excuses for why we can't give up the diets that lead us to gain weight. One of the most common justifications is that meals and beverages Key point 1. That are low in fat are often low in nutrients. The claim that a diet Key point 9. That are low in fat are often low in nutrients. The claim that a diet low in fattening carbohydrates would be deficient in important elements such as vitamins, minerals, and amino acids is untrue. To begin with, the meals we would avoid are those that are high in fat, rather than lush green vegetables and salads. This should be enough to alleviate any lingering concerns about vitamin and mineral deficiency. Furthermore, the fattening carbohydrates that are restricted, starches, refined carbs, and sugars, are already hardly present in necessary nutrients. If a diet forces us to go on a semi-fast diet, it will fail because our bodies will adapt to the calorie shortfall by using less energy. We will also get hungry and remain hungry. And as a result of both of these factors, we will become sad, angry, and chronically weary. We won't be able to sustain semi-starvation and its side effects forever, so we'll return to our old habits or become binge eaters. It is critical that both physicians and patients understand why we become obese. Because until our public health authorities do, reducing weight and being healthy will always be much more difficult than it needs to be. One thing is certain, overeating and sedentary behavior have nothing to do with the problem. Try this. If you're trying to lose fat, go on a carbohydrates-restricted diet and replace these carbs with a protein-rich diet for 4 weeks.